What's going on, everyone? It's Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, and I'm honored to be joined by one of my favorite human beings and NFL analysts. That's going to be Damian Parsons. You may know him from the Draft Network. He does some outstanding work, even covered someone for the Patriots, which we'll get into. And he's also got some excellent work on Locked On Draft, Locked On Clemson, and the Scout Room, which I'm very excited to check out on YouTube. That's budding. He's got some great content in the pipeline. Dame, thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Bro, it's been a long time coming, man. We've been boys for a minute, so I'm honored to be on here, talk some ball with you, and finally get going.
Absolutely, man. And there was actually a last-minute addition to the show because you were telling me on Locked On Draft you actually had a debate on Mac Jones versus Bailey Zappe, which it's been hotly talked about. I think some of that may have kind of leveled out a bit now that we have some practices underway, but training camps here, this is where things get really competitive. So before we get into that, tomorrow's the first day of training camp. We're recording this on Monday. What do you think about that potential camp battle, and who do you see coming out on top?
Man, I think Mac Jones is going to come out on top of that. I feel like skill set wise, they're very similar. Which is why, like, for me, being in Vegas when that draft pick came through, that Bailey Zappe in the 4th round, I was taken back because I was like, you already have Mac. Like, there's no need to bring in another quarterback that can do the similar things that Mac does. Because when I look at Mac, I see a kind of a point guard-esque type of quarterback, a guy that distributes the ball, can get it to his playmakers. You work well in the quick game. Instinctive, high football IQ, but the physical tools are average at best. So it's like, all right, let me get Mac as many weapons as possible, right? You look at crazy enough, wild enough. The Alabama has had 3 quarterbacks that very similar, like they high football IQ, good passers, accurate, but they just lack the physical tools. Mac, Tua, and now Bryce Young, and we've seen what Miami, bringing in Coach Mike McDaniels has done for Tua. It's not just, hey, we're gonna run the ball, we're gonna get some improved protection on the line, but also let's go get you some more weapons, right? And I think that's going to be the big thing, and that's what I wanted to see. So when Bailey Zappe became the pick, I was like, okay, and my co-host and partner over at TDN, Keith, was like, they drafted a quarterback that has the ability to make this a controversy. And we saw a little bit of that at the beginning of the season last year when Bailey Zappe, the crowds calling for him and chanting for him, and he's coming in and making the right plays. But I do feel like Mac is a better quarterback. I feel like Mac instinctively is better, and I think he's going to make more of the right decisions with the football. But if this becomes a battle, I would not be surprised that it's a close one. I feel like that Bailey Zappe, again, physically is kind of neck and neck in terms of like a straightaway race with Mac. But I do lean to Mac. Mac was, for one, draft capital matters a lot of times with teams. He was a 1st-round pick. He was a top 20 pick. And unless Bill Belichick absolutely has no faith in him, which I don't foresee that being the case, I think that Mac is still going to get the opportunity to go out there and prove that he's the quarterback of the future for this team, especially heading into a pivotal year 3, where typically you start to see that either ascension or that descension of a young quarterback.
Absolutely. So I mentioned your great work on the draft. The Patriots this year went pretty defensive heavy early on. Now, 3 guys where you could argue you could have gotten, like, I loved Zay Flowers before the draft. Obviously, Christian Gonzalez falls to them. Then they get Keion White, who you did a great write-up on the Draft Network. Then they get Marte Mapu, who is a low-key guy who I personally love just because he's got so much physical talent. He's smart, just came from a smaller program. And then, rather than kind of stock up on high-name weapons like all the tight ends that were in this draft, they went more O-line heavy, kind of got themselves a couple kickers, and then waited until late rounds to take Kayshon, Boutte, and Demario Douglas. So as somebody who covers the draft so well, I remember the day after you were tweeting that you were going to do a mock draft or studying for next year. I'm like, bro, like, give yourself a minute, like, treat yourself. But you're a hardworking guy, and I love that about you. So what was your way too early grade on the Patriots draft? Like I said, didn't get that big name weapon, but it felt like they filled a lot of other really crucial holes.
I felt like, I think, because I ended up having to do it for TNO, it was around a C+, I believe. They started off really strong. Like, for whatever reason, the NFL allowed Bill Belichick to get Christian Gonzalez. Like, I feel like that was just a big mistake. He was, to me, He was my CB1. It wasn't, Devin. I really love Devin Witherspoon and everything, but when you talk about just coverage ability, there wasn't anybody in this class that was on par in terms of just man-to-man coverage as Christian Gonzalez, the elite athleticism. Like, and it's crazy because I was just watching a receiver a couple weeks ago for the 2024 class that actually faced off with him. I can't remember which was it, Jacob Cowing. It was one of those Pac-12 receivers, and I'm watching him, and I realized I was like, who is following him? And it was Christian Gonzalez, because I was just like, this dude's in his hip pocket like every route almost, and just the transitions, the fluidity, just the easiness that he brings to just as a movement, in terms of movement skills. So with him, and I love the Keion White thing, and I remember telling some of my guys, I said, listen, Bill Belichick is the perfect guy for Keion White. Keion White is a former tight end from Old Dominion that transitioned to a defensive end, stand-up edge rusher when he got to Georgia Tech, but he lost a year due to injury after he made the change to the defensive side of the ball. So this young man, even though I think he's like 24 years old, people are like, well, he's in age, he's old, but in football, he's still young, especially on the defensive side of the ball. He's still young and raw. And I feel like Bill Belichick, we've seen him get guys like this before, right? That are athletic, versatile. They just need coaching up. And Bill Belichick's going to be the right guy to get Keion White and put him in an advantageous situation. You think about Jamie Collins, coming out of, I think it was Southern Mississippi or something like that. Jamie Collins played linebacker, edge, and safety in college. He did all of it. And because he was just that type of athlete. When you look at Keion White being 285, 290, but a guy that can run with running backs on wheel routes down the sideline and rush from the interior as a 3-tech, rush from the outside, a guy that can convert speed to power. I think that was just a match made in heaven for him to go to a Bill Belichick-led team. And then, like you said, Marte Mapu, like, this is a kid that we have not seen the best of yet because he's such a athletic playmaker and in terms of being versatile, where some teams have him pegged as a safety, some teams have him pegged as a linebacker, and other teams that I remember talking to have him pegged as kind of like a hybrid, just in between. And it just depends on the sets that they wanted to run, is where he would be if they draft him, where he will be aligned. So I'm excited for those three defensive players to absolutely, just kind of get those opportunities with Bill Belichick, calling the plays and really coaching them up. I think for me, when it went O-line, like when it started going, the run of O-line kind of happened a little early, but then not only did it happen early, it happened in bunches. Like it went center, and then in the forefront, because they have 3 4th-round picks, and went center. The kicker thing threw me off as well, and then he went back-to-back guards with Antonio Mafi. I'm gonna say this, like, out of all those guys, Jake Andrews, really competitive kid at the Senior Bowl and everything. I never got a chance to actually watch City Sal, but I heard good things about him. But Antonio Mafi, like, that's the one for me. Like, this kid, strong, physical, like, tone setter. And if anybody remembers the clip of Quentin Nelson coming out of Notre Dame, the clip that went viral of him in pass protection, he's uncovered, has no one to block, scans and sees a free runner all the way across the formation, goes and gives a kill shot and lays the guy out. Like, I think I tweeted out there. I think I actually tweeted a play like that for Mafi, where he's kind of uncovered. There's somebody looping around, and he just kill shots the kid, like knocks him on his butt, drops him, and he brings that, and that's what you want. So you're talking about being a physical team, late in the year, cold weather. This is what, he's the type of guy. So that's the guy, out of all these interior offensive linemen, that was my favorite pick, because he fits that Patriot mold. Yeah, he played at UCLA, and it's warm over there, but his game travels to cold weather situations. So I'm excited for that, man. And like I said, the Kayshon, Boutte, and Demario Douglas, I like those picks, especially where they were. Demario Douglas was the best weapon from Malik Willis on a pretty bad, like, Liberty team. It wasn't a good team in terms of NFL talent, but Demario Douglas is a good slot receiver that you can use in a variety of ways. You're talking about pre-snap motions, orbit, return orbit, different things like that, ghost and jet motion, and really get the ball to him in space. Being a space player, manufacture touches, but he's a good route runner as well. So it's like, you think about adding him, and he's changed his pace really well with his routes, tempos them well, good burst and explosiveness in terms of athletic ability. So I like that. And then, of course, Kayshon Boutte, and I think this is the one where, yes, he didn't test well and things like that. But I always tell people, man, there's testing athleticism, then there's functional athleticism.
Yes,
so
sir.
with him, like you pop on the Georgia tape, SEC championship game, right? Takes a crossing route and leaves everybody from Georgia and their star-studded athletic defensive unit in the dust. He turns it up and he takes it for a touchdown, right? Be able to outrun the Keely Ringos, the Christopher Smiths, and, Kamari Lassiter, all those athletic guys in that back end. He outran Malachi Starks up. None of them could catch him. Right. So it's like, I don't care what he ran at the combine. When you turn on the tape, you see a guy that plays with good speed, like field speed, in-game speed. He does a good job of that. So he's the one that I'm really looking forward to watching in camp, because I want to see, like, because, of course, all the talks about him, like, off the field, his decision-making and things like that. Like, how would that pair well with a Bill Belichick? And sometimes a hard, tough coach like that is what guys like Kayshon Boutte actually needs. Yes, so if this works out, like, this could be one of those kind of game-changing type of players. And Belichick's known for getting guys in this 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds throughout his coaching career that everybody else is like, hard pass, I'm fine, right?
Yeah.
Tom Brady, I'm fine. I don't want Tom Brady. Julian Edelman, like, he's a quarterback. What are we gonna do with that guy? Like, you know what I mean? And he knows how to turn those guys from afterthoughts to ahead of the class, and I'm really excited to see what Kayshon Boutte will bring. Like I said, I gave it, I think it was like a either C plus, because like the run on offensive lineman kind of threw me, because I was like, man, I would like to get Mac some more weapons, some big time playmakers, and really elevate his game and allow him to walk out of the huddle with confidence in what he's surrounded by. When like, okay, they're playing man to man, I got a guy that can beat that with ease, and like I'm gonna look for him and find that one-on-one matchup with him every chance I can, right? Like the Devontae Adams, the DeAndre Hopkins of the world, like those type of guys. Mac needs one of those. He needs one of those guys. Now Juju's going to be big. Mike Gesicki, I think, is going to have a big time role in his offense, and he can. But that was my biggest gripe with Belichick. Is like, I know you haven't had the best luck drafting receivers, but man, give Mac some weapons so we could really see how high his ceiling can go with more talent around him.
Absolutely. I could talk to you about the draft all day.
Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times, that's 10 times your first bet amount of bonus bets and up to $200. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you could spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to be, hitting the first home run. All in the app that's safe, secure, it's super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
But we got to move on real quick to running backs, because you're my running back guy. Anytime I want to know about a prospect or anybody like that, I come to you. So the Patriots, we talk about the weapons and Mac feeling comfortable. The running back room is probably the most talented in terms of, like, if everybody plays to their potential, you can have a really, really good group of players. Now, they are still looking for help. They worked out Leonard Fournette. They worked out Darrell Henderson. They've been linked to Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, I know he's expecting like $8 million a year, and the Jets are saying they seem to be the front runner right now, and they're saying we're probably not going to get more than 6. Which of those players do you think fits best in their system? Obviously, like, they've got different types of skill sets, but who do you think would be the best guy, considering they've got a Rhamondre Stevenson who's going to be your workhorse, your running back 1A at worst, and then they still have talented but unproven guys like Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong behind him. Who do you think would be the best person to bring in around training camp?
I think Leonard Fournette, of course, Dalvin Cook, because he's the best back available right now, but the money is probably not going to work in his favor to land with the Patriots. But I think Leonard Fournette would be a great addition, mainly because he doesn't have to play RB1 role anymore for you. You know what I mean? Where Rhamondre Stevenson, and especially in this Bill O'Brien offense, going back to what he ran last year in Alabama, when you study Jahmyr Gibbs and Jason McClellan for that in the Alabama backfield, there was a lot of zone runs. So just kind of pressing the outside, reading and diagnosing if it's a hard edge, it's a soft edge, and then making the right cutoff. And I think Rhamondre Stevenson, with his processing and quick processing ability, his quick feet and I'll tell you, I was actually I remember it was like right when he was coming into the draft, he went to the Senior Bowl. He had a great Senior Bowl. He dropped weight and all that good stuff. And I remember when I was watching him, and I tweeted out, I said, he is what Eddie Lacy was before the weight issues when he was healthy. And I was like, when you see a big back with this type of speed, foot quickness, power, can catch the ball, do all the things that he can do, that was Eddie Lacy. And when Eddie Lacy was like in his prime, health wise and everything else, he was an absolute monster, like in Alabama and with Green Bay in his short stint there. So I think with Rhamondre, he's going to be RB1. I feel like Leonard Fournette can come in and really, for one, keep him healthy, keep him fresh, especially throughout the season. If you want to be a run-heavy team, at the end of the day, you want to have multiple and capable bodies of handling that workload. Now, I will say, I think he will be the best, price option, like I said, because Dalvin Cook's probably going to outprice himself for the Patriots. But on the roster, I think Pierre Strong is the guy that I would look at to being that if they don't bring in another veteran back and they roll with Rhamondre and what's on the roster. I liked Kevin Harris, but like a year before he was draft eligible. I was like, he had a strong season in South Carolina. Then his last year, it didn't go so well, and the just offense didn't look great. Offensive line was iffy as well. But when I look at Pierre Strong, he fits that zone type of scheme. He reminded me a lot of Elijah Mitchell, who, was kind of a standout when healthy for the 49ers after he was drafted. And he works well in that zone scheme. He understands how to read, leverage, and manipulate second-level defenders, be patient to press and sell, like, hey, I'm going outside of the tackle, get those guys to commit and overflow and then cut it up. And he had that type of speed that I think, if anything, that gives that really good 1-2 punch, because you're going to deal with the power that is Rhamondre Stevenson and his quickness and speed in general. But it always throws a defense off, and especially linebackers, when you change the pace and you bring in a more explosive, more dynamic guy. And now you got to be a little more quicker to the draw. You know what I mean? Like an old Western, you got to be quick to the draw, because if you're not, the next thing you know, he's cutting back on you and you're flat-footed, and now you can't change directions, and he's going for 6. Where, with Rhamondre Stevenson, it's a little bit more calculated. You're like, okay, let's kind of corral him in. So I think Fournette would be the best veteran choice, but on the roster, I would love to see Pierre get the opportunity to be that RB2, because I think him and Stevenson will give them a really good dose, 1-2 punch, kind of thunder, lightning of a sorts. And he even runs hard himself in terms of with Pierre. He runs hard too, but especially if they want to if Bill O'Brien's going to keep running this zone offense, zone run game, I absolutely think Rhamondre and Pierre could be a really good tandem for the Patriots.
I actually want to get more into Bill O'Brien's scheme. We'll talk a little bit more about Stevenson and Strong a little later. But just to set the tone, last year, obviously, the Patriots offense was a mess. Like, it was disjointed. You don't expect to see a huge amount of carryover from what they were doing last year. But you did see them have success where, like, usually you see them as more just like a duo team where it's a lot of double teams, counter. Yep. And they're always going to be a multiple rushing attack. But at the same time, they completely scrapped outside zone because, Matt Patricia didn't seem to know how to really teach it to the way that they could execute it at a high level. Really affected their scheme. So from Bill O'Brien's perspective, like, you got Rhamondre, who's still very good on those downhill runs, like a Leonard Fournette. He's really good in running duo, counter, a lot of those gap schemes. And even Patricia last year, he incorporated some RPOs, but everything was behind the line of scrimmage. There wasn't anything really threatening you where linebackers are saying, I'm worried about you throwing it over my head if I freeze and respect the run. So not even necessarily compared to Matt Patricia, but just compared to what we've seen traditionally from the Patriots. What do you think Bill O'Brien's going to bring from that Steve Sarkisian, Alabama kind of hybrid system where he put some of his stuff, but also took what they've been doing well, and that Mac's familiar with? So how do you think that run game is going to look this season?
I think it should still be versatile. I think it should. It's one of those situations where I can envision it being like the Cleveland Browns, where the Browns, when they had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both healthy, you got a double dose of concepts where you see Chubb come in and they're running zone. Then Kareem comes in, they're running gap. And it's like, it's so difficult. And then they will flip it and they'll run the opposite with the other back. And it keeps you as a defense on your toes because you can't get a hold of tendencies. Right. And I think that's a reason why I really like Pierre, because again, you watch what Bill O'Brien did last year with Alabama. He had Jahmyr Gibbs and Jason McClellan. They would stretch you out wide. And you could tell the running backs were taught to be patient. Trust your blocks. You stretch it out a little bit, and then one cut and go and get upfield and get whatever is blocked. If it's 4 yards, get the 4 yards, right? If you can get more, but at least get your shoulder square to the line of scrimmage, get it parallel and go forward. And then with, and you looking at, courtesy of like PFF, like last year, they have Rhamondre Stevenson, of course, 107 carries out of gap, but he had 82 out of zone. So he's not unfamiliar with that, right? And he knows how to run it, where even, same thing with like, Damian Harris. It was like a 57-47 split between gap and zone. So I think it will be a similar situation where they might lean more on the zone run, but still have those moments of gap scheme to keep defenses on their toes and allow them to be creative. Because with that type of stuff, man, you can do a lot of different things. Talking about creativity, where you have like split zone action, like I said, duo, you running the ghost motion, pre-snap, and still kind of sell that, get guys to move and bump over to the opposite gap and then run zone on the opposite side of it, which I saw them do with Bill O'Brien do with Jahmyr Gibbs last year. He did a good job of that. He understands how to manipulate the box count. And that's what's really, like, at the end of the day, everything is a numbers game in the NFL. So especially the run game. Now you got a couple guys who can still run for 1,000 yards before, at 8-9 men in the box, and it's like Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, but that's not the norm for everybody else. When you start loading the box, guys start to be less effective. So he understands, especially even with his sets, kind of going to 11 personnel and detaching a tight end and moving guys, getting bodies outside of the tackle box, where it's like, okay, now your quarterback in survey is like, yep, we're going to stick with this run play instead of, kind of go ahead and audible to a pass, and you want to stick with what's working. So I think with Bill O'Brien, he's going to bring enough creativity in the run game. He's going to bring spacing in the run game, but he's going to be balanced in terms of, I think you're going to see both zone and gap. And that's what I said. I'm really excited if they do just go with Pierre and Rhamondre, because I think if he sticks to what he did at Bama, this run game is going to be really successful.
Isn't it so nice to have an offensive coordinator who knows what he's doing? I'm not trying to dunk on Matty P,
I
but
know Mac Jones is happy about it.
I know, and I know you've been watching the Pats film. Like, it was not easy to watch. Just a lot of not so great. I'll leave it at that. I could go on for a minute, just going off of last year's, to put it nicely, catastrophe. But Rhamondre Stevenson. Now, another, I would say, kind of a slight. You look at the Madden ratings. Obviously, Madden ratings aren't everything, but when you see Rhamondre Stevenson isn't even in the top 20 for running backs, that seems a little bit odd to me. So I understand that, like, league-wide, he may not even be seen as necessarily a top 10 back, just, if you ask the average fan. I think if you watch the tape, you'll see this is a guy who's not only emerging, but I think already is kind of like knocking on the door that maybe not upper echelon, where you're talking like a Chubb or a Henry, where it's like these guys just aren't human. Like, don't compare anybody to them because they are their own person. But right under that, do you think that Rhamondre could be knocking on the door like a top 8 back, like getting into that top 10? And how do you think that happens? Like, what do we see something different from his game? Does he just get better because the situation around him is better? How do you see him in year 3?
I do think he's knocking on that door. This is a talented runner, a guy that has, for a big body guy, typically you see those guys and you think, okay, power, he's going to try and lean on me, fall forward. And then he does those things. But there's a level of nuance in terms of patience, vision, processing, start ability to get in and out of exchange gaps, the footwork. And that's I always tell people, the big thing with gap versus zone, the footwork is totally different. You know what I mean? It's where zone, you're pressing and you're stringing the run out, and then you plant that outside foot and you get squared and you get vertical. Where in gap, you're attacking, but you have to be able to exchange gaps in case something changes. That nose tackle picks the gap you're supposed to hit. Now you gotta slide, you gotta jump cut, you gotta quickly move your feet to then, if he wants to displace himself, you gotta replace him where he left that void. And Rhamondre Stevenson does a good job of that. He has the open field burst and speed to make you pay when you're not able to corral him within that 10 yards. I always say that for me, with running backs, yes, it'll be great to have running backs that consistently run 4.3. I personally don't care, because a lot of fastbacks don't have the patience. And I always use this analogy. Yes, it's cool to drive a Lamborghini when there's no one on the road, but can you navigate through 5 o'clock traffic? Right.
Absolutely.
Like, can you navigate and get into the creases and gaps of traffic and then get in front of the pack? Okay, now you can let that bad boy open. Then you can open it up. But when there's a bunch of cars and there's a lot of moving parts and everything else is kind of chaotic, you can't open up because you're gonna wreck. So it's like, those are the type of things I talk about with running backs. And Rhamondre Stevenson understands how to do those things. So I think he is knocking on the door. And Madden, they don't really watch film, so it's just like, it's very, very apparent when you look at their rankings. It's like, oh, well, you guys didn't watch any football last year. Great. But so it's like, but when I look at him, I think for him to really get this young man, looking at the numbers last year, right? 210 carries, 1,041 yards, averaging 5 yards a pop, and he had only, 5 touchdowns. So you want to see the touchdowns get close to the 10. And you want to see him, if they, run them as much, you want to see him break a few more big runs, right? Because that's the highlight reel stuff, and get up from 1041. Let's get up to 1,200. You know what I mean? 1,200 yards, still averaging 4 to 5 yards per carry, and get up to like 10 rushing touchdowns for the season. But also, he can catch the football. So I want to see them get him more reps in the passing game, so people really know what this young man can do. Because again, if he's a fantasy stud, right? If he becomes a true fantasy stud, now that whole world knows about him.
Everybody knows. Exactly. Now, I think the biggest thing, seeing him take that jump, like last year, you saw the receiving and all that stuff, but he was the offense. It's not good when your runner is both your lead back in terms of rushing, and he's also one of your leading receivers. That's not a combination you want, especially with someone like his running style. So that puts more important on someone like, running backs. There's different roles. There's really a workhorse, a change of pace back, and a third down back. Rhamondre was doing all of that last season, which is just not sustainable. Luckily, he worked out and got in better shape. But that's where, like we talked about it, Pierre Strong, you'd ideally like to see him as that change of pace back and also as your third down back because of his explosiveness. And you've seen that, in college, and the Patriots tried it a little bit last season, him even going downfield on seams and stuff like that. But the incumbent is Ty Montgomery. Like week 1 last season, he was the third down back. Unfortunately, had a really bad knee injury and missed the rest of the season, but he's been working out like crazy. And although he's mostly a slot receiver in camp because of depth issues, you expect him to be that guy just as the veteran. So what does Pierre Strong have to do to separate himself from Ty Montgomery, kind of establish that not only can he be a change of pace back, but also a guy you rely on third downs and passing situations? And if he can't snatch that job from Montgomery, what does Ty give you in that role?
So first thing Pierre is going to have to do, because a coach like Bill Belichick's not going to play with it, is protect the quarterback, right?
Absolutely.
Be disciplined, square, be square, square up your target, scan the field, find, if you're uncovered, find work. Like you cannot sit back there and just twiddle your thumbs. So being reliable in pass protection to where if, you're supposed to go on the route, but Max sees pre-snap that, hey man, like that nickel's coming. And if he comes and you go on this route, I'm gonna be by myself. You're gonna be, leaving me hanging. So Mac makes the change, and if Pierre Strong can show him that, hey, I'm reliable enough to make this happen and to take care of it, perfect, right? So that, and then if he can line up in the slot, and detach from the formation, come out of the backfield, and be used as a motion player too, to where you can start running routes with him, and you find ways to get him matched up on linebackers. Let that speed take account in open field. But also, all right, do you have just, I would say, basic route running where we can run some whip routes with you. We can run some choice routes with you against some linebackers or even some safeties. And I think that'll be big. But if he can't win the job from Ty, that's where you want to see Ty thrive, because he's a former wide receiver. Ty, we don't even Yeah, we want you to be reliable in pass protection too, but Ty, we want you out in the slot. We want to get you up against some of these linebackers. If we know coverage indication, right? If we know it's man-to-man and Mac feels like it's man-to-man, motion Ty out, Mac, and let's see what it is. And if they motion that linebacker out there with him, you know that's your hot if they try to send some pressure backside. And then that allows you to have that mismatch weapon, because it's all about creating mismatches. Locate it, create it, locate it, and exploit it. That's the key to it. Exploit that mismatch. I think Ty can do that, but I would love to see if Pierre Strong can do the same thing, or just to an extent. I'm not asking him to go out there and be a route running savant. You don't have to be James White. Then that's not what we're asking you to be. But just go out there and be functional in terms of route runner, so that we can use you more in the passing game and allow your speed, because he's probably the fastest back, in the backfield, in that room. And if that's the case, we want that speed on the field, Pierre. We want to get you on the field and really take over.
I love that you mentioned the mismatches, because that's Bill O'Brien's entire thing. It's where can I put you as empty packages? It's like, all right, I'm gonna put you inside the formation. Someone's gonna have a really good matchup, whether you're the number 3, the number 2 weak. Like, there's gonna be a linebacker on somebody. How can you exploit that? Dame exceeded my expectations. I didn't even know that was possible. Obviously, we're going to have you back, but I have to be conscientious of your time. You're a very busy man. So if there's anything you'd like to plug, let the people know what you got going on, please, the floor is yours.
Of course, over at the Draft Network, I actually just dropped the mock draft today. It should be out on Twitter. Just for early 2024 mock, I want to get into the action, as well as Locked On NFL Draft. We're not just an NFL draft podcast. We talk college football, we talk NFL, things of that nature. And if you're a Clemson fan and a Patriot fan, tap into Locked On Clemson as well. And I will be having a Patreon Patreon account dropping where, you can join, especially if you're, I'll be doing a lot more film breakdowns for Clemson and everything like that on there as well. And I'll be tapping in like Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons stuff. So definitely, you want to tap into more NFL stuff in general, breaking down football, holla at your boy.
One of the hardest working men in the business. Thank you again, Dame. Appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate you, buddy. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time.